Check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Good morning, everybody. A warm welcome back to day 2 of this year's 6G Global Summit. Great to have you all here again in person in Hong Kong, and welcome to all of those joining us online from around the world. I hope everyone had a very good evening. For those of you here, I hope you all enjoyed the fantastic reception laid on for us by the Communications Association of Hong Kong. Thank you to them. Possibly you even managed to slip away afterwards and enjoy the delights of Hong Kong. In a second, I will be welcoming back to the stage our conference rapporteur, Jolly Wong, and he's going to give us a brief overview of the key issues we're going to be focusing on in the discussions today. And he will also be introducing this morning's keynote speaker. Before I do that, just a couple of housekeeping notes. My thanks again to the Communications Authority of Hong Kong. I know I speak for us all here to thank them for being such wonderful hosts. We appreciate all their hard work and their hospitality for making this such a successful event. And again, I would like to thank our sponsors and partners. Their logos are behind me, who've supported this event. These events don't happen without your support, so thank you. Now, just to remind everyone that if you're online and you want to get involved in the discussions, there's space on the right-hand side of your screen, which you can use to submit questions to panelists and speakers. And thank you, actually. I think the online participants trumped those in the room on questions yesterday. So thank you for all those. Do keep those coming. For those in person, please do put your hands up and ask those questions. The microphone will be brought to you. Looking forward to a vigorous debate today. Just also to remind you that PDFs of all the slides that are shown by speakers today are available for download. And you can access those by scanning your QR code if you're here in person, and you'll find them virtually in the reception area on the platform. Talking about QR codes, one's falling apart. You will also find, when you scan that, the online feedback form. I'm not asking you to fill that in right away, but just to flag that for everybody. I'll mention it again later, but we really appreciate your feedback, and that is online. It's a short form, so if you could look at that later today, before the end of today, we'd appreciate that. So thank you for that. Right, to start today's proceedings, we've got another busy day ahead of us, and so we're going to welcome Jolly to stage. He's going to give us a summary of the key issues to be discussed. So Jolly, very warm welcome this morning.
So very good morning, everyone. Welcome back for the second day of the 6G Global Summit. I hope that you enjoyed the first day as much as I did. I don't know how much you collect the thinking, the debates, the agreement, disagreements from yesterday, but I have some key takeaways for myself from day 1, which I would very much like to share with you. Number 1, there are clear differences between the 6G and previous generations. It remains reliable and resilient connectivity everywhere, but it's beyond communications and speed. Number 2, just like me, there are more lessons learned from 5G, but the bottom line is monetization. How we can monetize the 6G services. In our 6G journey, I think when we debate between revolution and devolution, it's not either or, not just in the morning tea or coffee, but it's a a mix of promoting revolution and accelerating evolution just to ensure efficient deliveries of services. Certainly, AI can play a pivotal role to unleash the full potential of 6G, such as security, privacy, sensing, and intelligent resources management. And finally, that's the most important takeaways that I have yesterday, because the experts in this room do have different views on new spectrum. But generally, they agree with the wider global benefits of one single standard and economies of scale for 6G. So I hope that debate and conversation will continue on day 2. So today we will kick off with a keynote presentation by Mr. Hiroyuki Atarashi. He's the chair of the working group 5D ITUR. This will be followed by 2 panel discussions, one on 6G spectrum roadmap, which is a very important topic. We will have a focus on strategies to deliver the required bandwidth. And the other panel will be about the vision of a true networks of networks, which is to deliver how seamless connectivity across diverse networks technologies of mobile, Wi-Fi, satellite, and IoT. After lunch, we will have another panel about sustainability, which is in a very heavy part in my heart, because I think is the central driver for 6G. Panelists will examine the critical stakeholders' role in advancing this sustainability agenda through collaboration and explore the innovation technologies and fresh approaches that are needed to achieve performance and reduce energy footprint. After coffee break, our summit will feature a special session to explore some emerging use cases about no-altitude economy and how AI will elevate consumer experiences in the 6G era. The summit will be closed with some final conclusions by Mr. Choshen Leung, Director General of Communications OFCA, who is also the host of the event. Thank you. So without further ado, I would very much like to introduce our keynote presentation speakers this morning, Mr. Hiroyuki Atarashi-san.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hiroyuki Atarashi. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to express my gratitude to the Communications Authority of Hong Kong and Global Forum for inviting me as a keynote speaker at this event. Thank you very much. Today, my presentation focuses on the path towards IMT 2030, called as 6G, known as 6G as well. I'm the chair of the ITUR Working Party 5D, so I'd like to introduce the overview of the recent activities of ITUR Working Party 5D. So this slide is explaining the role of ITU in IMT development. I believe there are 2 aspects in the ITU activities. The first aspect is global harmonization of IMT spectrum. This is achieved by the World Radio Communication Conferences, and this involves regulatory and technical studies. And this is achieved with the collaboration with regional organizations. And the purpose of IMT identification for spectrum is addressing the needs both for the developing and developed countries. Another work stream of ITU is standardization of IMT radio interface technologies. This is achieved by the development of relevant ITUR recommendations. And ITUR Working Party 5D is responsible for studying both aspects regarding the overall radio system aspects of IMT systems, considering both spectrum and regular technical perspective. And this slide provides the overview of that ITUR has been achieved in the past. As you know well, every almost 10 years, new generation of mobile communication systems have been introduced. And ITU standardization activities for the mobile communication was started for the 3G era. For the introduction of the 3G systems at WRC held in 1992, 2 GHz frequency bands were identified for the IMT 2000 technologies, also known as 3G. After that, several WRCs considered the identification of the additional IMT spectrum. In 2000, they have identified 800, 900, 1.8 GHz and 2.5, 2.6 GHz frequency band. They are the basis for the introduction of the 3G and 4G technologies. And at WRC 07 and WRC 15, 3.5 GHz frequency bands were identified for many countries. This frequency band is the basis for the 5G technologies currently. And from the technology perspective, ITUR has also achieved its role in terms of the development of the ITUR recommendations. For the 3G, ITUR developed a recommendation M.1457, which includes the technical standards for 3G technologies, including wideband CDMA and CDMA 2000. And those technologies were evolved to LTE. And for the 4G technologies, ITUR has also developed recommendation M.2012. This includes the technologies for LTE advanced, a combination of the LTE technologies and carrier aggregations. And for 5G, ITUR has also developed recommendations, including the 3GPP, 5G NR technologies. And currently, ITUR is working for IMT 2030 and 6G. And this chart was referenced in many presentations yesterday regarding the usage scenarios of IMT 2030. This chart is included recommendation ITUR M.2160. And this describes the usage scenarios envisaged for the IMT 2030 technologies. And this includes the extensions of the IMT 2020 5G scenarios. In addition to that, ubiquitous connectivity, AI and communication, integrated sensing and communications are referenced. And another symbolic figure regarding the capabilities of IMT 2030 is also included in the same recommendations. This chart identifies 15 capabilities, including a kind of legacy capabilities such as peak data rate, spectrum efficiency, latency, and something so on. And in addition to that, new capabilities of IMT 2030 is also identified in this chart. This part is referring to the sensing-related capabilities, positionings, AI-related communication, and so on. And this is a timeline for IMT 2030 This timeline was developed in 2023. As I mentioned, in order to establish the framework of IMT 2030, the recommendation ITR M.2160 was already published. And currently, ITR Working Party 5D is developing the requirements for the IMT 2030 technologies. Last year, ITU has issued an invitation letter to the external organizations to call for the proposal for the candidate IMT 2030 technologies. And I would like to highlight that not only defining the requirements, we also have to consider how to evaluate these requirements. And in order to do so, ITR is considering or studying the evaluation methodologies for the specified technical requirements. And based on these studies on the technical requirements and the methodologies for evaluation, ITR will call for the proposal to the external organizations. And in order to respond to this request, as explained yesterday, 3GPP has already started their studies for the 6G. And I assume that they are going to provide their candidate technologies for IMT 2030 to Working Party 5D. And those submitted proposals from the external organizations will be evaluated from year 2027. And if ITR confirmed that proposed technologies are fulfilled the specified requirements by ITR, such technologies will be included in the ITR recommendation, which is expected to be published in 2030. And the following part is referring to the spectrum. And I think this information was also referenced in several presentations yesterday. WRC 227 held in 2027 will consider the additional identification of the IMT spectrum. And ITR is considering 3 candidate frequency ranges. Among these frequency ranges, the middle one, 7125 to 8400 MHz frequency band, is receiving most attraction from the membership, according to my understandings. This is because this frequency range can provide higher channel bandwidth using the relatively mid-band spectrum, but this frequency range is also heavily used by the incumbent applications, including some important applications. In order to address these issues, ITR is now conducting sharing and compatibility studies between IMT and incumbent applications if this frequency band can be used for IMT. And another aspect is non-terrestrial networks for IMT. And I believe that this aspect has been also mentioned in several presentations yesterday. NTN will supplement existing terrestrial mobile networks and enhance the next generation of mobile networks and services. It aims to improve connectivity for users in served or underserved areas on the globe. And actually, this activity is studied by other study groups in ITR, Study Group 4. And one of the Working Party 4C, is in charge of the studying mobile satellite spectrum. And at WRC 27, there are several relevant agenda items. First agenda item is mobile satellite in IMT frequency band. This is studied under agenda item 1.13. And we are considering the frequency bands between the frequency range from around 700 megahertz to 2.7 gigahertz frequency band. As you may know, some mobile network satellite operators has already started direct-to-device communication services in collaboration with terrestrial IMT mobile operators. But in order to establish more stable international framework how to provide such services, WRC is going to discuss this matter. And in addition to that, new mobile satellite spectrum are also considered as agenda item 1.12 and 1.14. But as I mentioned, these matters are mainly studied by ITR Working Party 4C and Working Party 5D. My group is contributing to these studies from the viewpoint of the protection of the terrestrial IMT networks. This is my second slide explaining the benefit of the global harmonization. Maybe I don't need to explain in detail, but providing the achieving the harmonization of the spectrum economies of scale can be achievable, and roaming is more easy, and we can address the cross-border interference issues among the neighboring countries. So this is my last slide regarding 6G expectations, in my opinion. As I mentioned, international planning for 6G in the 2030s is underway, and ITU is developing the global framework, while external organizations like 3GPP are responsible for developing a detailed technical standard. And Working Party 5D is currently focusing on the development of technical performance requirements for IMT 2030, and they are going to call for proposal to meet these requirements. From the spectrum perspective, I believe that the migration of legacy mobile spectrum is of course essential in order to use the latest technologies in these frequency bands. But in my opinion, enabling new spectrum bands will offer the best launches for the new technologies, including 6Gs. And considering that 5G technology is currently using 100 megahertz channel bandwidth as a kind of default channel bandwidth. So in order to differentiate from the 5G technologies, I believe that 200 megahertz channels or multiple of them would be a good key target for securing spectrum for 6G systems. I think my following session will consider the 6G spectrum matters. So I'd like to looking forward to hearing from the views from the expert in this regard. So with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Terashi-san, thank you very much indeed. I certainly saw quite a lot of furious note-taking as you were speaking, so thank you for your keynote. As Jolly mentioned, one of today's key focus areas is spectrum and the different options that are available to deliver the bandwidth that is required to meet the ambitious demands of 6G. We are delighted now to have the chance to focus on that in depth with our panel of key experts. So to moderate this first panel of the day, it's quite a large panel, as you can see. We're going to welcome to the stage Amit Nagpal, who we saw yesterday as well. And joining Amit will be Wilson Lee, Assistant Director, Office of Communications Authority, Hong Kong, Tassos Leratsis, Co-Chair of the Subgroup of 6G Development RSPG, Ross Bateson, Special Advisor for GSMA, Jose Arias, Head of Global Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Nokia, Niz Pawati, Senior Director, Government Affairs, Southeast Asia for Qualcomm, and Bui Ha Long, Acting Director, International Cooperation and Frequency Coordination at the ARFM in Vietnam. Amit, if I can welcome you to the stage with your panel. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Great, thank you very much, Bruce. And it's great to be doing this panel session on spectrum for 6G. I think it's a topic that has come up many times yesterday, and obviously in the opening remarks from Jolly Wong and also the keynote presentation we've just had. Very much an important topic, and I think very much some differing opinions on this in terms of whether we can make do with all the spectrum bands that have already been identified for mobile. Can they just simply be recycled, refarmed to be used for 6G? Or do we need some additional spectrum to cope with, to allow us to offer new services, to cope with traffic growth, and so on? So, although we've talked about this in brief in many sessions, this is really the session to drill into this in more detail. And we've got an absolutely fantastic panel to do this for us. We've got a mix of 3 regulators and 3 industry representatives. I think Bruce has just briefly introduced each of them, but I will reintroduce as each panel member comes to present. And we're going to have a very similar format to all the other sessions. So I'll ask each of the panel members to make 5 minutes of introductory remarks. And please, as you can see, it's quite a big panel, so I will ask everyone, please do try and stick to 5 minutes. Because after that, we'd like to have some time to have an open discussion, and in particular, take any questions from the audience here and also online. So, to say, let's not waste any more time, let's go straight in. And I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker. It's Wilson Lee, who is with the Office of Communications Authority at Hong Kong. And I guess you're going to tell us all about what's happening in Hong Kong with spectrum for 5G and 6G. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, and good morning, Mr. Napel, and ladies and gentlemen. Today, I would like to introduce Hong Kong's 5G supply in Hong Kong. As seen from the screen, you will see that Hong Kong has supplied a total of 5,100 new spectrum made available to the market since the year 2013, and in both the low band, mid band, and also the high band. In the low band, you will see it's about the 7 megahertz and 600 megahertz. And for the mid-band frequency, we will have 3.5 gigahertz band, which is the core frequency, 5G mid-band frequency, and also the 3.3 or 4.9 gigahertz band. And of course, in addition to the recent with the auctions on the upper six frequency band. And also the high frequency band is about the 26 or 29 gigahertz band. So altogether, we have made available over 5,000 new spectrum to the market since the year 2019. And the second one, this is a simple comparison about the usage scenario, which you should have been seeing it before. But just I mentioned about there's about the 3 distinctive usage scenario about the AI and communications, ubiquitous connectivity, integrated sensing and communications of 6G, in addition to the 3 usage scenario of 5G, such as immersive communications, ultra reliable, low latency, and massive communications. You will see there will be a significant improvement of 6G over the 5G technical performance in terms of peak data rate, area traffic capacity, connection density, mobility, and of course the latency will be reduced from 1 millisecond to 0.1 millisecond. And in summary, actually to support the development of 6G, a combination of both low band, mid band, and high band frequency will be required to facilitate the coverage improvement and also the capacity enhancement. And talking about the WLC 27, you'll see the 1.7 agenda items have already identified the IMT, and also the Mr. Atarashi has already introduced the progress in the IT Working Party 5D. And you will see there will be focus on these 3 bands, which is the 4 gigahertz, 7 gigahertz, and the 15 gigahertz. And there will be some regional identification or even the global identification in one or more of these frequency bands. And also about the non-terrestrial networks, there will be agenda item 1.12 or 1.13, which such as the 1.13 is also talking about the new allocations of mobile satellite service for directivity between the space station and terrestrial IMT stations between about 694 megahertz to 2.7 gigahertz band. Talking about the recent spectrum supply in Hong Kong for IMT, actually Hong Kong is the first in the world to conduct the auction of radio spectrum in part of the upper 6 gigahertz band for the provision of IMT service, including the 5G advanced, or 6 gigahertz, according to the technology neutral principle. So you will see the progress of this band, and I would not go through the detail, but I would say we have already made assignment of the part of the upper 6 gigahertz band in March of this year, and with a validity period of 15 years. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Wilson. Thank you for keeping to a very good time there as well. Much appreciated. Okay, let's go straight on to our next speaker. I'm very pleased to introduce Tassos Lyratsis, and you're speaking today in your role as co-chair of the subgroup for 6G development in the European Radio Spectrum Policy Group. And over to you.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you very much to Forum Global for the invitation and the opportunity to present RSPG's work in this conference. The RSPG is a high-level advisory group established by the European Commission in order to assist them in defining radio spectrum policy in Europe. So the RSPG work related with 6G for 2024-2025 was introduced yesterday by our chairman, Alexander Solstik. And I will give you some more details about the report we published recently in February on the 6G strategic vision for Europe. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Okay. So briefly, the RSPG has worked on 6G for various years, and there are a lot of groups that are related to our work for 6G, like the WRC group, the upper 6 GHz group, and our group, which is called the Strategic Vision. So we published a report on February. You are all familiar with the this figure in the ITU recommendation. We worked on that, and to try to figure out how to implement those scenarios, we studied spectrum and network communications for the implementation of those. And we indicated the possible spectrum bands for 6G that will be further assessed in preparation of a 6G roadmap for Europe. The report also contains reflections on the definition of intensification of mobile networks, the integration between IMT and fixed networks, including the wireless LANs. And we also recognize that 6G should build on the joint evolution and interoperability possibilities of terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks. We also investigate solutions for spectrum sharing with emphasis on inter-service sharing. For compiling the report, we had a lot of input from stakeholders, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that is represented in Europe for their very valuable input, including some people that are also represented here, like GSA, GSO, and GSMA, and all operators that are always providing input, and we are in open dialogue with them. So I will just take some key points from the input from stakeholders. The importance of low bands for reliable nationwide coverage, the high mid bands in the 7 to 15 gigahertz range, including the upper 6 gigahertz for beating capacity demands in urban environments, the millimeter wave bands for small cell deployments in confined areas for higher data rates and capacity. Stakeholders stated a need for 200 megahertz additional spectrum in mid-bands for each operator to enable implementation of 6G use cases. Research proposed that spectrum sharing between 6G networks and incumbent users must be incorporated in the 6G spectrum discussions from the beginning of the technology development. And finally, manufacturers and researchers indicated a clear need for a 6G spectrum roadmap for Europe. So, some results on spectrum to be considered for 6G. I'm sure that you are all familiar with the concept. There are bands that are already harmonized in the European Union for electronic communication services, like spectrum in the low bands, the mid bands, and high bands. These have been already available to mobile operators, with the exception of the latest one, the 42 gigahertz band. Next, the 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz band for low and medium power local networks, which is currently under study and under harmonization. The upper 6 gigahertz band, which is already identified for IMT, and is also used for implementing wireless access systems, including radio LANs. And this band is subject to RSPG investigation by another subgroup working with us. The RSPG also noted the following bands that have been included in the next WRC agendas in 2027 and 2031. These are subject to many uncertainties, especially for Europe. Finally, our next task will be the 6G spectrum roadmap for Europe. This will indicate the spectrum bands where the first launches of 6G can be planned and made available in the member states for 6G mass market and vertical markets by 2030. The content of this roadmap and the time frame of the first RSPG opinion is currently under discussion in the RSPG. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Tassos. Let's move on to our next speaker, and we're moving on to sort of get the industry perspective now. I'm very pleased to introduce Ross Bateson, who is Special Advisor with the GSMA.
Thank you very much. I'll just get the clicker. Thank you very much, Amit, and good day to everybody. Thank you so much for having us here in Hong Kong. It's a wonderful, wonderful place with fantastic energy, incredible food, and of course, great connectivity. So I've got 3 points to make, and I'll try and make them in 5 minutes. Just wait for my slides to come up on screen, which I think they now are, at least for me. No. Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. I press that one. Okay. Great. So point number one, we're planning for a future that right now we don't fully understand. An example here. We've all had a bit of fun with AI, Have you guys asked it to make a magazine cover with cute animals? Have you done something else? Everyone's had a bit of fun with AI. Are we using it for productivity yet? Some of you are. Some of you may be using some AI in your network. Some of you may be using, I don't know, Copilot to help you draft emails. Some of you may be researching with AI. It's pretty light at the moment, and in all honesty, that's not showing a great traffic need. But as we try to plan the very long-term planning of spectrum, how do we make sure that we do so in a way that lays a foundation for artificial intelligence and for all the other applications that we're talking about today? And that's the big task that we have in front of us, both today, in the next 2 years, in the run-up to WRC 27, and then at points in the future. I mean, we're trying to plan up to 2040 now. That's 15 years away. It's not an easy ask. So point number 2, I mean, there are a few applications that we've talked about that clearly have very different spectrum demands, and some of them are probably more likely than others. Some of them may happen, but we just don't know yet. And clearly there are some 6G applications that we've been talked about that are the basic stuff, the plain vanilla stuff, in terms of, you know, growing video, more FWA. Lots of people have talked about enterprise digitalization this week as well. What's the extent of that going to be? And that's why I put it in different categories here. What's the extent of how AI is going to work? Is that going to be a huge amount of demand? And where is the AI going to be processed? What's the demand going to be on the network? And things like that are unknown. So I'm putting that across in all those categories. Which categories different things are in, I'm sure we can have a discussion on. But my point is that these 3 different stages of probability have very different spectrum needs. We can just about say that with 6 gigahertz, with the discussions in WRC 27, maybe we're starting to look after the first category. Are we looking after the second? By the time you get into that disruptor category, you're talking about things that are highly demanding a bandwidth. Are we going to have holograms? Everyone keeps asking. Well, we don't know. But I mean, it seems likely that the rectangular screens that you've had in your pockets for 18 years now won't be the same in another 15 years' time. And will we have communications? Will we be doing meetings via hologram in 10 years' time? I don't know, but it seems likely that some social uses, TikTok videos, you know, hologrammatic emoji videos, these kind of social things that will have a big buzz among especially young consumers, these things may start to happen. What's the use for that? And if we actually move up to holographic communications, that's a huge spectrum need that we need to look after. And no one is anywhere near that. No one is anywhere near that at all. So the third point, and this was made by 1 or 2 people yesterday, is that we don't need to go very far into those categories for the demand to be big. Now, we did some research last year from GSMA and used some Ericsson figures as well. And yes, that line on the left-hand graph is going down, the percentage growth terms, but the numbers of growth are still going up. So those bars, blue bars on the left, are the EB figures for how much growth you're going to get a year, and the prediction is 107 by 2030. Now, if you look at the right-hand graph, which is the total traffic, and those 2 graphs are not to scale, as you can probably see, the total traffic, if you want to, of 107 EBs, is the same as the whole of mobile traffic in 2022. So maybe we've got that wrong. Maybe we've got that wrong by a factor of 2. Well, you only have to go back to 2020 total traffic, and that's going to be the growth every year. By a factor of 4, you only have to go back to 2018. So whatever, these numbers are huge, and we need to cater for it with spectrum. And finally, what are the bands we're going to be looking at? Well, as you know, in a 6G environment, we're looking at 200 to 400 megahertz channels to deliver the capacity and the consistent user experience that's required. And there's a few options on the table right now. Now, I think it's fairly obvious to everyone in the room that there's some much lower hanging fruit than others. And if you don't have satellite in 3.8 to 4.2, that's a good place to look. Whether, you know, the 6 gigahertz band that was identified for IMT, again, that we've seen that being assigned already in Hong Kong. We've seen that being assigned in the UAE. And obviously, that's going to be a massive band that now a huge number of the global population is going to be able to use. So these options are available to you, and the demand is clearly growing, and we need to make sure that we deliver a base spectrum base for the applications of the future before really knowing what they are. But we need to make sure that we empower humans to deliver their productivity in a 6G environment and make sure that we allow people to connect and deliver a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. And straight on to our next speaker. Pleased to introduce Jose Arias, who I think you spoke yesterday as well, but to reintroduce you, who is Head of Global Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Nokia.
Okay, we are ready. So, in a fast-changing world, technology is everything, and it is in the fabric of society, business, and human evolution. My name is Jose Arias, and I'm representing here Nokia in this panel. So, I will start my introduction saying that the base station system for 6G need to be highly energy efficient on the one hand, but on the other hand, they also need to handle extremely high data rates, as mentioned by GSMA. And this technology should not introduce high processing latency and provide sufficient flexibility for features like dynamic spectrum sharing. This seems an impossible challenge, you may say, but the answer is no. So let's hear our president of Bell Labs Core Research, Peter Vetter.
6G will transform the way we live, the way we work, connecting human worlds, physical worlds with digital. And that will unleash new possibilities.
Yes. So another question is, could be, is it too early to talk about 6G? Well, the response is in some ways, yes, if you are thinking the commercial deployments, but that won't happen until we have seen 2030. However, from the life cycle point of view and from the spectrum perspective, which is the matter of this panel, we're at a crucial stage. In Nokia, as a technology company, we are paving the way, anticipating the future demands for emerging trends, and that is something that we do. At Nokia, we established the 6G vision several years ago, and it's now great to see many of the concepts that we presented as a vision have been adopted by the industry. This is a good point for us. Since then, we have been working in research to advance technologies so we can have the best standards for 6G. Then, as it was mentioned actually yesterday several times, a couple of months ago, the 3GPP held the 6G workshop in Incheon, South Korea. So this is really the kickoff of the standardization process, and now we are seeing a shift from the research to the standardization. One of the motivations of 6G technology will be just simply the traffic growth that was mentioned before. Perhaps it's not the most relevant in concept for 6G, but it is still important when we speak about 6G. So in this slide, you can see the consumer mobile traffic projected growth in global network traffic from 2023 to 2033. These numbers are in exabytes, so we are talking about extreme data exchange traffic. As you can find all these details in a presentation that we made as a Nokia Bell Labs in the mobile network traffic report that it is available on the web. You can find the details. So in this aspect, to carry out more traffic, we need additional spectrum, just simply because the figures are going exponentially, as you saw in some other slides before. So in the left-hand side, you will see the mobile traffic report is to grow from 6 to 9 times by 2033. Then in the left side, in the right-hand side, you can see the expectation for the growth from 14 gigabytes to 108 gigabytes a month in 2 different scenarios in the consumer mobile traffic per subscription by month. And then in the next slide, you will see what we refer as the first day as a basic service set. Different examples here in the presentation. 6G will build on 5G success and do so more in a more efficient, economical, and scalable way. So for these scenarios, it is worth to take a look on what Mr. Atarashi have presented before, the ITU recommendation 2021-60 with the usage scenarios, which is an important thing to review. But here, I'm going to focus the two last points in this slide. We have to consider that the right spectrum for the right application. So this is important to consider different scenarios in coverage, mobility and capacity, but also in high capacity. This may sound obvious for everyone, but it isn't. Basically, construct the idea why the 6, 7, 8 GHz band are the most important and appropriate range to balance the mobility, but also the capacity. And then finally, in this slide, you can see something that was presented in different slides yesterday and today. But the important thing here is to consider that lower bands are for extensive coverage, and then middle frequency bands are going to be expansion of existing 5G mid bands. We are talking about the upper 6 GHz. But then the most important topic for 6G in terms of spectrum will be the frequency band 7.1 to 8.4 that is going to be treated in the WRC 27. In our point of view, this band is for extreme capacity and data rate boost, that it is important to balance the coverage, but also the capacity. The important point here is to try to reduce the infrastructure, to reduce the grid that we can reach for instance, in the 3.4, 3.5, 3.6 GHz band within the 7.1 to 8.4. So more or less, this is what we believe in terms of the needs of a spectrum for 6G. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. Okay, let's move on to our next speaker. I'm very pleased to introduce Nis Pewati, who is Senior Director of Government Affairs at Qualcomm. Over to you.
This is the Thank you very much. First of all, thank you to Forum Global and Hong Kong OFCA to invite me to speak at this event. Okay, let me try. Okay, for some of you who might be not familiar with Qualcomm, Qualcomm is, sorry, which one is? Okay, yeah. Yes. But it's, okay. Qualcomm is the world's leader in wireless communication technology. We have revolutionized the mobile communication industry, starting with 3G, 4G, 5G, and now we are discussing about 6G. We redefine connected processing, and we want to enable intelligent computing everywhere. We also, our company designed RF and modem integrated in a chipset, which is the chipset is included in a laptop, smartphone, wearables, automotive, and IoT. With all this, okay, with all the deployment of all the devices, it comes with the data traffic. So we are now seeing unstoppable growth of data traffic, which is at the moment we predict that it will grow from to 4 times from 2023 to 2030, and then the growth is driven by the use of extensive 5G applications that we are now using, and then enhancement of mobile streaming video, and use of wearable devices that is now widespreading, and then also cloud gaming. But important of that mobile traffic is also brought by AI. AI is a new source of data traffic that grows, that is projected to grow from 5 times to 9 times from 2030 to 2033. And out of those mobile traffic growth, 1/3 of it is all AI data. So with those unstoppable growth, we can see that this unstoppable growth happen not only, it's all happening in globally, in all continents and across all regions. So I think we have to start thinking about how we can accommodate this data growth. I'm going to skip this because everyone knows about this, but this is, okay, now, when we talk about 6G, we will need all spectrum. We will need low spectrum, low band, mid band, and also a millimeter wave. In the existing low and mid band, we will enhance the capability so that we will enhance the coverage and then the capacity band. With the new mid band and 6G technology, we will have a new ways to help improve the capacity, although the coverage is the same, such as in mid-band. So this is an example of the C-band. So where you want to have a same coverage, but the capacity will enhance. So we will have innovation in terms of how to make the spectrum become more efficient, and then how it will help with energy efficiency and also keep the coverage. So this is as discussed by our colleague Jose, that we will need to balance between the coverage and the capacity. Okay, let's probably, this is just an illustration how we use the technology to keep the mid-band, that even though in the left-hand side is the existing mid-band, in the right-hand side is that you are using the existing mid-band plus the new mid-band, which in this case, we put example of 400 megahertz per bandwidth per operator, and you will use that a lot of devices can be connected, and then it provides 3 times faster the average of speed. And in Qualcomm, we do research what we call this 6G GigaMIMO, where we actually put the same antenna and power, but we use more antenna elements. So we can put inside on the antenna is about 4,096 antenna elements compared to the 256 element that we have at the moment. So this is the spectrum that everybody's already mentioning about, but I think in summary, I want to mention that, okay, with the 6G spectrum, we do a lot of innovations that we would like to enhance the capability of the current existing spectrum, but with the additional new spectrum, you want to increase the capability of the technology, which is in this case is we want to cater the development or the growth of the mobile traffic with the new band. So it is important for us to also identify the new mid-band spectrum in the WRC27. I think with that I conclude my presentation.
Thank you so much. Okay, we move on to our final speaker and we go back onto the regulatory side now. I'm very pleased to introduce Bui Hanong, who is Acting Director of International Cooperation and Frequency Coordination at the ARFM in Vietnam. And I think he's also speaking in his role as co-chair of APG 27 Working Party 2. I guess you'll say more about this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Amit, for this kind introduction, and good morning to all. So I prepared a couple of slides for this session, and I'm Bui Halong from ARFM Vietnam, for who may not know about us, we are the authority on the spectrum in Vietnam, and we already have some good job in preparing the spectrum for 5G deployment, and now we are researching for the new spectrum for 6G. In Vietnam, we also established a steering committee for facilitate the research and development of 6G technology in Vietnam. So one step back to what we did with spectrum so far. So for this spectrum, we prepare quite from our point of view. We already prepare quite good set of spectrum band from low band, mid band, and high band. We make all the band available at a timely manner, and but when we release the spectrum to the mobile operator, it be conjoined with very carefully conjoined with the mobile operator for the timing and for the amount of bandwidth. So far, we already have the 900, 1800, 21, 2600, and 3800 frequency be released. Some of them be licensed some years ago, and last year we did the auction for the 5G spectrum in 2.6 and 3.8 gigahertz frequency band. We are going to identify the new spectrums in 600 megahertz for, and also the upper 6 gigahertz for the IMT using in this year. And with this preparation, we now providing to the market 640 megahertz bandwidth total to the mobile operator for 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. But now in Vietnam, the 2G and 3G are setting down. The 2G is already shut down. We just keep some function for the voice call only, but for the normal connectivity, no 2G at all. And what is the result of the 5G development in Vietnam? On the left-hand side, you can see that our ranking in the mobile speed is somewhere around 50, the position of 50, when we not have the 5G. But now, at in March 2025, our ranking raised up to the position of 18, with a very impressive download speed measured by Ookla. And one of the measures that we support to the operator is the government will provide some subsidy to the mobile operator in terms of the cost of the base station to support the fast deployment. And we also promote the use of Open RAN in Vietnam by in-house development. And what we do with the 6G, we try to figure out some visions and also action. So we think that the proactive in research and study for 6G help us to go together with the world. And the second one is the 6G could support the digital transformation and also support our strategy in made in Vietnam hardware. The next one is 6G is not only focused on the data speed, it can support many other advantage use case. And last but not least, we think that the satellite component can complement to the coverage or to the services of the wireless connection. And we also prepare some action to adapt the need of the 6G. So specifically on the spectrum from Vietnam, we quite actively contribute to the IPT community. So we provide some studies, some analysis on the spectrum, and then we also provide some contribution to the World Radio Conference 23 to propose some candidate band for the 6G. So that's some brief introduction from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all the speakers actually for broadly keeping on time. So I really appreciate it. So it gives us a bit of time for an open discussion. And maybe I could start off. I think I'll start, if I can, by picking on one of the themes, Tassos, you raised. You talked about the need really to start thinking about sharing of spectrum with other services as a sort of inbuilt component of 6G. And I think looking at the way, you know, that some of the sort of initial studies on some of the new spectrum bands are going, for example, we haven't talked about it so much in this session, but certainly in many other fora which the 7 to 8 gigahertz has been discussed, there's been a lot of discussion about existing uses in that band, including the military and so on, and they're unlikely to just go away and stop using it. And so some sort of sharing solution will have to be found. And of course, up to now, you know, many services share spectrum. You know, satellite shares with fixed links, PMSE, you know, is built on sharing spectrum. But the mobile industry has, to a large degree, been relatively immune to that. It's had exclusive use bands. So I was very interested by your comment about the need to build in sharing. Maybe you could say a little bit more about that. And I think it'd be good to get a response from the industry as well to what your thinking is about that. So Tassos, do you want to say a little bit more?
Thank you, Amit. Yes, we have discussed a lot about sharing. It's true that the spectrum is a finite resource, and it's becoming scarcer and scarcer by the minute. I mean, everyone wants some access to spectrum. There are incumbent users, as you already mentioned, and what I said in one of the slides is that the next agenda items for IMT in the range of 4 gigahertz to 15 gigahertz are really difficult for Europe because there is a lot of use in there and for quite critical applications. So you already know that CPT, our regional group, has objected to for those bands to be included in the next agendas, but they are there, and we have many difficulties for finding solutions for IMT there. About sharing, yeah, I think that's the only way to go. Otherwise, we cannot push the incumbent out of the band because there are already critical systems deployed there. It is very difficult to clear these bands. And taking the example of the past, there has been a lot of effort on clearing bands with less critical use in there. And I don't know how it will be possible, especially as you mentioned, for military systems to abandon their use and making it available, especially if we are talking with time frames like 2030 or whatever is to come later. So yeah, what we have discussed, and we have also been urged by research to pose this, let's say, mandate or demand to manufacturers, to the industry, to try to incorporate sharing mechanisms from point one in all the standards, all the mechanisms, all the specifications that you are building. So I don't have more details. I don't know about the mechanism. I know that in the past, some, let's say, trials were not so successful. They used a lot of processing power with, well, not so satisfactory results. I don't have the solution, but also I feel that I don't have the resources that are demanded by, especially by IMT, to give it to them.
Maybe some thoughts from the industry here and on how feasible sharing is. I mean, obviously, you know, sharing something that moves with something else that moves can be very challenging because it's very unpredictable. But perhaps give us some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, definitely, if 6G will introduce AI, as native. So this is gonna help to improve this coexistence with other services. But the important point here is that this sharing and compatibility between different services in the same frequency band allows to have outdoor power solutions. This is a key important topic, and this is in order to reuse the grid that the operators have in place nowadays. If we see that some service is quite restrictive to have not enough power in the outdoor operations, this could restrain the technology and the development of this new technology as 6G. But just to let you know, in Nokia we are making a lot of testing with different governments across the world in order to test how could be these possibilities in the future in order to share with different services. An important work that we are doing currently, it is in the upper 6 GHz band. This is we have a testing site doing some kind of testing in the upper 6 and also but in the lower part of 7 GHz in order to prove, first of all, the technology we are developing, but also the compatibility that we could reach in the future. So again, in this regard, it is important to have coordination with the industry, with other industry players, not from the mobile industry, but from different services that could be operated in the band, but also with governments, because governments should be aware what are going to be the implications of implementing some kind of technical restrictions or technical conditions, not restriction conditions, in order to operate with different services. So again, the important thing here in order to make 6G successful is to try to reach the more or less the same the same grid that we are using in 3.5 GHz band. And with the testing we are doing, not just in Nokia, but also in the industry, we are seeing that with the new improvements, we can reach more or less the same coverage as we are seeing in the 3.5 GHz bands, which is an important milestone.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on this? Ross?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Jose. I think you've made some really important points. I mean, mobile needs full power. Without that, we lose speed, we lose productivity, we lose affordability, and we increase our carbon because we need more sites. So all these sharing mechanisms that are based on turning the volume down on mobile, fortunately, I think are largely being pushed out of the way nowadays. But some discussions on 6 GHz have talked about what if we lower power and we can share. Those are losing fashion. And let's be honest, this is not solutions that either side of the 6 GHz debate. The Wi-Fi guys don't want that, and the mobile guys don't want that. It's lose-lose. So how do we look at sharing? And as I said, 6 GHz may be the final low-hanging fruit that we have, and thereafter we need to be more creative. We understand what full power means by 6 GHz because we bashed that out in WRC 23. We don't know what that will look like for future bands, but different sharing mechanisms may be able to be discussed, and some of those may be win-win, but we don't know yet. So, I mean, for sure, military systems don't want to share the same networks as mobile. The security doesn't work on lots of levels, and the SIM issues and other things is a huge problem. But can we look at sharing spectrum? The areas where we need our highest capacity in any country. Well, okay, lots of Hong Kong, but lots of Singapore. But in most countries, the areas that we need the highest capacity are not huge areas. They are areas with huge numbers of people. So can we use those for mobile in those highly dense areas and have military systems outside that in the countryside or whatever? Can we think about ways that again we use intelligence in the network? At the moment there's an emergency situation to completely remove mobile from a particular band. Consumers and businesses operate on lower speeds for the period of the emergency, and then we switch back on afterwards. So those kind of discussions. And the reason I said win-win is if we're moving IMT into government bands, then we're producing mass market IMT equipment in those bands. So it could be a way of delivering better affordability for governments as well. But those are the sort of concepts that we're talking about in the run-up to WRC 27.
Wilson, did you want to?
Thank you. I just noticed that about the spectrum sharing, I noticed that in some administrations, like European countries, there are some technical studies on the sharing between the wireless LAN and also the IMT in the upper 6 GHz band. I noticed there are some kind of technical studies on that. And on sharing Hong Kong's experience, that in 5G, I mean the high 5G experience in Hong Kong's 3.5 GHz band, which is the core mid-band 5G frequency. Actually, it's quite difficult to share between the satellite downlink and the IMT base stations, because you have to protect those very low signal of the satellite downlinks. So several years before, we set up the 5G restriction zone to protect those satellite stations away from the possible interference from the 5G stations. So we did it, but it's quite difficult and to realize such kind of co-channel sharings. But in the future, for example, in the upper 6 GHz band, we have made preparations for that to ensure that in future the compatibility studies, the co-channel sharing between the fixed service and mobile service and also the satellite service will be in accordance with the IMT compatibility studies or some kind of recommendations to ensure that all the telecom service will have their spectrum to support the development of their service and also ensure the compatibility among each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to turn to the audience. Are there any questions in the audience? Yes, we have one there. We've got some. Have we got a microphone, please? Oh, and one at the back as well. Actually, as we'll go to the one at the back because the microphone just happens to be. And then I promise I will come to you, sir.
Scott Minahan from Windsor Place Consulting. I wanted to sort of focus in a little bit on a couple of those questions on spectrum demand and sharing, and in particular ask about public safety mobile broadband in terms of demand and in terms of use. The ITU came out with a paper, I think quite late, I think it's M2415. It used to be PPDR broadband demand, and then it became spectrum aspects. I suppose my take is that in this part of the world, we don't necessarily want to see a huge block of spectrum assigned over to public mobile broadband or public safety mobile broadband, sorry, because even the public networks are struggling to get enough spectrum. But when we see the US in the 4.9, we see some other parts and certainly in other countries working this through. Is that another demand that we need to think about? One of the issues I had was I thought it might be about 100 megahertz or more of additional demand just to deal with whether we need robots, drones for firefighting, for all those types of services. I'd be interested in Ross's view, but maybe even more broadly, Nokia and others, and whether we haven't thought that part through as well about what we need in some particularly urban centres in Asia Pacific. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Scott. Okay, Ross, are you happy to take that one? Or
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the ITU document you talked about, I'm afraid, but I can talk broadly on the topic. Obviously these are all critical applications that we need to provide. Whether or not they're best provided through dedicated spectrum or whether they're through some other provision, I think is open to discussion. Obviously, some countries like to have their own dedicated spectrum and dedicated network, physical network for PPDR, but that's not always the case. And obviously, in many countries, such warning systems, etc., are provided through the public mobile network operators as well.
Thank you. Please.
Yep. Yes, of course, this is something considered, but it is not exclusively if we are talking about 6G. actually, we have this a concept since 5G. Remember, we now have the network slicing application, which is capable to have different network slices between the same network. So this is being considered in this stage for 5G, and of course 6G will consider it as well in this part of the evolution or revolution thing. This is going to be part of the evolution because it's already being considered as a part of the requirements for different applications, and also this is something that we at Nokia call as well the enterprise or vertical sector, which includes the public safety and other applications.
Nice, please.
Yeah, actually, I was going to talk about the same thing as Nokia, but it's already happening. I think some of the countries at the moment already considering to have network slicing for PBDR. So I think it's a solution for both public network and also public safety.
Thank you. Do any of the regulators want to comment on this topic, this question? Yep, Tassos.
Thank you. Well, I agree with what has been said. In our studies in the RSPG, we could classify, let's say, PPDR and public safety networks as verticals. It has already been mentioned. And what we have found out in the past when we opened the dialogue with vertical is that we don't speak the same language. I mean, they have some needs, they don't know what can be offered to them. So we have to make them aware of what telecommunications networks can offer to them and how they can achieve their goals via that. On the other hand, mobile operators always say that they can fulfill their the vertical's needs, and that goes the same for the public safety networks. So yes, I agree. If we have network slicing, it will be a very, very good idea. It will guarantee some quality and some, let's say, high response when there is the need, for, especially for public safety networks. So we have to think that way. Otherwise, just because what I said in the beginning, not speaking the same language, we don't have any big demands, especially speaking for my country, any public consultation for spectrum that is going to be available. We have almost no comments from the, let's say, generally public sector and the public safety networks.
Thank you. Gentleman there.
I am T.Y. Hui from the Airport Authority Hong Kong. We are in the aviation industry. The aviation industry have a concern about the new spectrum to be released by the 6G, which is the 4.4 to 4.8 gigahertz. As we know that the existing radio or terminal bandwidth should be 4.2 to 4.4. During the implementation of the 5G, I think about the release of the 3.5 gigahertz, they already create issues in the American on the aviation safety. I want to know how the panel will address the concern of the aviation industry on this new band to be released for 6G. Thank you.
Can anyone take that question? I know in Europe work is being done in terms of the 3.8 to 4.2 and the compatibility with the altimeters and the aviation use. I don't know if any other work is being done on, as you say, 4.4 and above to check the compatibility. Anybody comment on this? We?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. Yeah, we already consider this issue of the aviation safety system a real antimatter when we examine the feasibility of the C-band, and we already did some explain some trial on this matter, and we find out that with some specific requirement on the base station side for the emission requirement we can protect the radio antimatter so far. And with the lesson learned from European and from some other country like Japan and maybe US, we already set some power limit, the output power limit for the base station. And now coming up with the 4 to 4.8 gigahertz frequency band, we believe that the same solution can be applied to this. But from our spectrum authority, we also encourage the aviation industry to try their effort to enhance or to improve the performance of the radio antimatter receiver, because the point is come out from the filter of this radio antimatter. It's too big, something very similar with the satellite C-band receiver. So we are trying to encourage the airline industry to improve this. Thank you.
Anybody want to add anything to that? No, I think everybody's. Yeah, Wilson, go ahead.
I think about the 4.4 to 4.9 gigahertz bands. I understand from Mr. Atarashi is that in the ITU Working Party 5D is actually conducting some technical studies on sharing between the existing service. I think not only in the co-channel, it is also in the adjacent channel. I think the airport authority is talking about some aeronautical navigation service in the adjacent channel. So I'm sure the ITU working parties will study the sharing studies, the compatibility study between the existing service in both co-channel and adjacent channel to ensure all the services are compatible before assigning or identify the 4.4 or 4.9 gigahertz band for IMT or 6Gs. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've had a couple of online questions from online participants. One is about a band I hadn't considered in this respect before. So the question is, will 300 megahertz to 400 megahertz frequency band be also considered for 6G operation? Has anyone come across this? Any thoughts on how useful or it might be?
I can give a really short answer to that straight away, which is not right now. Okay. Maybe in the future, I don't know, but not at the moment. We're obviously looking at UHF.
Yes.
In the long term, but not down to 300. Not down to 300. From what I've heard.
Okay, I'll ask the second question that has come online then. So the second question is, which I think relates to some of the themes we've already discussed, which is, given the regional disparities in the current use of the proposed 6G pioneer bands, how realistic is it that WRC27 will deliver true global harmonization? And what compromises might be needed in order to achieve this? Very simple question. Who would like to have a go at answering this? Nice?
Yeah, I'll start, then probably other gentlemen can fill in. Yeah, I think at the current status, I think it's a challenge to have a global harmonization of the 6G spectrum. I mean, yeah, currently, if we think of the agenda item 1.7, I think we can see, I mean, if you look into all the database in all the countries, we can see that it's, very narrow band and sparse. I mean, like it's not all in one place. So I think it's going to be a challenge. So probably, we have to try to work it out on how we can do sharing in terms of sharing studies and the technical sharing studies, so that the incumbent users can also probably allow some spectrum to be used for 6G. I think that's what I'm trying to propose.
Yep. Of course, it's going to be a challenge, but we still are positive about it. The key element, I believe, here is to consider that the new spectrum for 6G could be around 7 gigahertz. This is the key point, at least from our perspective. If we are going to talk about 14 gigahertz band or perhaps lower bands, the conditions for the research and the development of the standardization is going to be quite different. So if we can just think about this idea to have the new 6G spectrum available around 7 gigahertz, I believe this could be a real success in the future, meaning the upper 6 gigahertz band or parts thereof in the 7.1 to 8.4. I believe if we concentrate the efforts to have a spectrum on those bands, that would be awesome. The issue is that countries and regions have different usage, different views on how to use the spectrum in these frequency bands, and this is the main challenge. But again, if we can concentrate the efforts to have a spectrum, new spectrum for 6G in the upper 6 till 8.4 gigahertz band, I believe that would be a key success.
Yeah, just a slight addition from me. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the possibilities at WRC 27. There's a couple of good ones for global harmonization. First of which is just the bottom chunk of the gender item 1.7 7 gigahertz band up to 7.250. So that's small expansion of 125 megahertz is possible, I think, unless and Tassos will know this well, our friends in France turn off the lights on the Eiffel Tower and go home. There's no possibility of them, doing some clever ITU trickery, turning the agenda item round and us having that middle chunk in Europe. And so that's not globally. And I think that's fairly clear as well. But the other really exciting opportunity of WRC 27 is more people signing into the upper 6 gigahertz footnote. We had some really, really long decisions trying to get such a massive part of APAC signed in WRC 23. We were really, really close, but we didn't quite get that over the line. But we've now had some major moves, principally from India, in supporting the band more, and that huge market for harmonization can come in and sign in to the footnote in WRC 27. So that's a major harmonization win there, just through the further signing into the footnote as well, I would say.
Thank you. I think you.
Yes, in terms of the spectrum regulator, we are very interested in the harmonization, but the harmonization term in terms of ITU, I think that so far we are quite conservative on this, and we can have some observation from the practice on the frequency band 1.5. We already have this global harmonization for this band for many years, but so far it's not moved. So just we raise the question that do we really need the global harmonization? We understand that the harmonization is very important, but it's not everything. It's not all. We really need the support or the driving from the industry, both as the vendor and also the mobile association, and also to provide some way to utilize the spectrum, not fully global harmonization. The good example for the C-band. The C-band, when many countries decided to deploy the 5G there, but not many countries be identified for IMT. And so far we are upgrading, we are improving the radio regulation to have the new identification. But from my side, in short, harmonization is important, but not everything. Thank you.
Thank you. I have time for one very last quick question. There we go. Make it quick, though.
Thank you. Very quick question. My name is Jing Tang from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I've been closely watching Hong Kong 6 gigahertz spectrum auction. Now you have 100 megahertz spectrum haven't been sold, plus 300 megahertz spectrum in the upper 6 gigahertz band haven't been allocated for IMT. So will you consider using that spectrum for Wi-Fi Ireland in the future? Because we have seen customer demand want to use that band for better Wi-Fi. For example, in Hong Kong airport, on Wednesday I landed at the airport. I wasn't very impressed for the Wi-Fi performance there. So could you provide some comments there? Thank you.
I think very clearly one for you, Wilson.
Actually, in 6 gigahertz bands, we will say you will say the lower 6 gigahertz bands, lower 6 gigahertz band, you have 5 megahertz bandwidth. For the upper 6 gigahertz band, you will have 7 gigahertz bands. So totally there are 1,200 megahertz band in 6 gigahertz bands. So there's a lot of spectrum demand on that band. I will understand. For example, the Wi-Fi, Hong Kong has already planned the lower 6 gigahertz band for the wireless LAN service. That is Wi-Fi 6E or the Wi-Fi service. So talking about the upper 6 gigahertz band, so we have to consider. Obvious understand there's some kind of sharing studies in some administration, like European. Some they are studying whether there will be a co-channel sharing for the wireless LAN and also the IMT service in the upper 6 gigahertz band. But I also heard the voices from the some European mobile network operators that they are urging for the entire upper 6 gigahertz band for IMT and not for the wireless LAN. They have reasons to issue an open letters and post on a website. So back to Hong Kong. So to answer the question is that we have to strike a balance between whether the efficient use of the spectrum for the different kinds of telecommunication service, not only about the wireless LAN and the mobile service, and also the other service like fixed service or satellite service. So the after consultation, we conduct a year before for the use of upper 6 gigahertz band. We listened to views of industry from different stakeholders, and eventually we decided that part of the upper 6 gigahertz band will be used for, the 400 megahertz. 400 megahertz in the upper 6 gigahertz band will be planned for the IMT service or 5G advanced or 6 gigahertz band. And also there's some kind of existing service like the fixed service. There are also some very important fixed service also in the upper 6 gigahertz band. And of course, the satellite uplink is also in the upper 6 gigahertz band. So to answer the question, I would say it's result of the consultation, and we have considered all the views before we reaching a decision to planning 400 megahertz for IMT service. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to be honest that the upper 6 gigahertz band is one I'm sure we could have 2 hours of discussion on, if not more, here. But unfortunately, we are 2 minutes over time already. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to close that topic here. But can we just say a huge thank you to all the panel members? I think that was a great session, and thank you for your contributions, and thank you for your remarks. And over to you, Bruce, to tell us how long we've got for a break and the session afterwards.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Emmett. Thank you very much to our mega panel. We're going to take a break now. If we can be back in the room, and for our online guests at 11:35 Hong Kong time, 11:35. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Just give people a minute or two to find their seats. Very good. So we certainly started today on a topic that I think certainly ran into the break, and I think we'll continue with some good discussions on this next panel as well. We're continuing that spectrum theme with a look at connectivity, and this session focuses on the possibility of the emergence of an integrated network of networks that brings together multiple technologies and networks to deliver seamless, ubiquitous connectivity. So with the rise of direct-to-device solutions already driving closer integration between terrestrial and non-terrestrial networks, will 6G see things being taken a step further and the emergence of a fully integrated network of networks? We've certainly got, I think, the panel to give this some good debate. So without further ado, if I can introduce our moderator, Raymond Yung, who's Professor of Information Engineering at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, Chris Wolford, Director of International Spectrum Policy at Ofcom, Iora Ferreira, Board Advisor at Anatel from Brazil, Alex Orange, VP of Technology and Spectrum at Omnispace, and Adrian Scrace, Visiting Professor from the University of Surrey. Raymond, all yours.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Raymond Young. Today, we're going to talk about network of networks, and welcome to the session. Well, first of all, what is network of networks? It's essentially how to integrate multiple heterogeneous networks into a single unified networks. And these multiple heterogeneous networks may include wireline networks, okay, cellular networks, Wi-Fi, satellite networks. Nowadays, we have geosynchronous satellites and also low orbit satellites. And we also have Starlink nowadays, and air-to-ground internet that connects the passenger flights, and Internet of Things, etc., etc. Well, network of networks is not something new. I searched on the internet, and the term has been around since the time of the ARPANET. However, it has not been achieved so far, not so during the 5G era. We talk about this for many years. Now, the question is, how about 6G? Are we going to achieve something further beyond what we did for 5G? Now, some of us may say that, well, it is given that we have enough time, we would be able to make it. However, it is not that simple because the networks are getting more and more complicated. So in a way, it is a moving target. Now, today we are very glad to have a few experts on this subject, and we are going to talk about the status of networks and also the challenges ahead. Okay, first of all, may I introduce Chris Wolford, okay, who is the Director of International Spectrum Policy from Ofcom UK. Chris? Yeah.
So, good morning to everyone. Thank you very much to Ofca and to the organisers for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the network of networks. And I mean, the fundamental question is, are we moving towards a network of networks? Well, I think as Raymond's already indicated, I mean, we're part of the way down that process. Indeed, within the UK, Oh, I lost my slides. There we are. It's perfectly clear that there isn't a single network that's going to meet the needs of all the different types of user. Okay. So within the UK, as I say, there's no single network that's going to meet the needs of all users. Different use cases want to utilize different technologies, need different solutions. So from a regulatory perspective, within Ofcom, what we're trying to do is to facilitate and enable different types of network to meet those different user needs. And underpinning these sort of regulatory initiatives that we're undertaking is spectrum sharing. That's really one of the fundamental approaches, I think, to enabling different types of network. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'm going to talk about those in a little bit more detail as some of the examples of how we're enabling different types of network. But I also just wanted to mention our upcoming millimeter wave awards on the right-hand side of the screen, and that's of the 26 and 40 gigahertz bands, and we're planning to award those later this year. And the reason I mention that here is that traditionally in the UK, when we've awarded spectrum for mobile type use cases, it's been on a nationwide basis. However, with these millimeter wave awards, for the first time, we're looking to actually have an urban rural split in terms of how we award the spectrum. So auction licenses in urban areas, but also make spectrum available on a first come, first served basis in other parts of the UK. And we think that will lead to more efficient use of the spectrum. In terms of the other ones, I'll just go through these each in turn. I wanted to mention our shared access licenses, and there's been a lot of talk over the last day or so about making spectrum available for verticals. And in 2019, Ofcom introduced the idea of shared access licenses, which is essentially local area licenses, low, medium power type use cases. And we've seen lots of innovation in terms of these local licenses. Some very innovative use cases that probably wouldn't have emerged if such spectrum hadn't been available through fairly straightforward application approaches and quite cheap to get these local low, medium power licenses. We've got the local area licenses, shared access licenses across 4 bands. I think the one that's been of most interest is in 3.8 to 4.2, where there's been lots of innovation. And to the extent that actually we've began to see some scarcity of spectrum in that spectrum band, and we've recently changed the rules to see if we can sort of enable slightly denser deployments and encourage better collaboration between users in that band. Another area that's been very topical, particularly on the last panel, just carrying on that debate, is the upper 6 gigahertz band. Ofcom published its consultation on the upper 6 gigahertz band earlier this year in February. And essentially that approach is based around spectrum sharing in the upper 6 gigahertz band, or a shared approach. And the key aim here is that there's been lots of talk about should the band be for Wi-Fi, should it be for mobile? Actually, what we want to do in the UK is make it available for both. So what we're doing is we're making it available through a shared approach and a phased approach. So we've opened the band for Wi-Fi now. We think that will enable consumers, businesses to benefit from the Wi-Fi ecosystem that's already available. There's equipment out there that can be used. But we're also providing surety of access for mobile in the future. Whenever the mobile equipment ecosystems are available. We think that will be maybe around 2031, 2032 in the UK. And that therefore provides a win-win solution for both mobile and Wi-Fi. And we've also set out the challenge to industry in terms of what's required in order to make that sharing work. And that will either be through some sort of band split, probably the most probable is a band split, or through some sort of indoor-outdoor sharing model, and both options in the consultation. And the final thing I just wanted to mention, which I think will be picked up by others on the panel as well, and was certainly talked about quite a lot yesterday, is the role that satellites are playing to support connectivity. And this is really key, I think, for providing connectivity, particularly in rural, hard-to-reach areas. A couple of things we've done in the UK is that we've looked to facilitate some of the new innovative types of satellite applications, particularly around the LEOs. We've adapted our licensing regime for LEOs in order to ensure that we have the necessary levers to enable sort of effective regulation of some of these innovative new services. And I also just wanted to end by mentioning direct-to-device. We published a consultation from Ofcom earlier this year, it's currently consulting, on enabling direct-to-device in the UK. Our plan would be that we'll start to be hopefully able to offer services on a direct-to-device basis and license those services from around about the end of this year. But we will obviously also take account of what comes out from the WRC in relation to that issue. I'm conscious of time. That's an overview of where we are in terms of some of the different networks that we're enabling in the UK. I think lots of progress has been made. There's no doubt more progress that needs to be made, particularly in terms of encouraging connectivity and interoperability between those networks. But there's quite a good basis to build on, I think. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. The next speaker I would like to introduce is Ira Ferreira, who is a board advisor of Anatel from Brazil.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Raymond, for moderating, and then thank you for Global for the invitation, and also the Communication Authority for this kindly hosting us. Today, I'd like to share a few insights from perspective of Brazil about 6G and NOWAN, and network of network concept. First of all, I'd like to present some pictures of Brazil. As in other country, the deployment of 5G brought high expectations for the three key applications, EMBB, MEMTC, and the URLLC. In Brazil, for 3,000 base stations, almost of them is NSA, non-standalone, and are primarily using EMBB. MEMTC remains below initial expectations, and URLLC is still just an expectation. Another issue is about the densification. The 5G deployment is in urban center mainly. As you know, a higher frequency reduce the coverage range, requiring a significant increase of number of base stations. In Brazil, most 5G infrastructure still relies on the 4G networks for support. Nevertheless, 98% of urban population has some type of mobile coverage, such as 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G. Regarding 5G, around 70% of urban population are covered by this technology. In rural areas, network coverage substantially inferior, with less than half of population accessing any connectivity. Similarly, under half of our federal and state roads are covered. Additionally, given Brazil borders with 10 neighboring nations, system of interoperability becomes critical to enable transparent user roaming while ensuring privacy and security protections. In this context, Brazil has made significant progress develop a regulatory framework tailored to technical requirements needed to overcome these challenges. In December 2024, following the WRC 23 guidelines, Anatel allocated 700 megahertz in 6 gigahertz for IMT fixed servicing. And we are now finalizing the Wi-Fi 7 and 6 gigahertz IMT coexistence stood for indoor and outdoor deployments. This milestone followed in February 2025 by the approval of a spectrum consultation to establish the schedule for upcoming spectrum auctions, covering short, medium, and long-term horizons. Concurrently, Brazil has been implementing an innovative secondary spectrum market mechanism designed to both enhance competition and facilitate market entry for new players. However, significant challenge remains. A substantial portion of spectrum originally acquired through previous auctions continue to be underutilized across 1,000 Brazilian cities. Another significant initiative that Brazil has been developing involves direct-to-device testing using standard smartphone. SMS messages were successfully transmitted through LEO constellation that demonstrate NETNs can deliver connectivity in remote areas. Well, in summary, as Brazil advances in 5G deployment and paves the way for 6G, key priorities remain, as I told before, coverage of rural area roads and cross-border and other issues, especially in the spectrum regulation regarding potential of network of networks concept, along with aforementioned initiatives, which are aligning with global best practices, demonstrate our commitment to innovative solutions for connecting remote areas. Thank you again for this opportunity to share the Brazil perspective.
Well, thank you very much, Ira. I love the colors on the slides. Well, the next speaker I would like to introduce is Alex Orange, who is VP Technology and Spectrum of OmniSpace. I just learned that he's based in New Zealand.
So, it's good morning, 早晨啊，你好嗎？I'm based in Auckland, but I used to be based in Hong Kong. And I'd like to say that the network of networks means to me a ubiquitous network that connects everything and every person to every location in the world. That's the network of network for me. And I have, not intentionally, but it has become my life's work. I started this work in 1997, and since then, I'm just going to do a little bit of self-introduction. I don't mean to be self-aggrandizing, but I think it's going to help you understand from where I'm coming from, because I'm going to take a step back. So in the early 2000s, I chaired the sub-working group, the ITUR Working Party 8F sub-working group, which was responsible for the candidate bands for the terrestrial component of IMT 2000. I chaired the sub-working group for sharing studies in ITUR Working Party 5D. I am the co-chair of spectrum sharing in the APT wireless group. And I chaired the sub-working group at WRC 23 that was responsible for the 4 MSS agenda items for WRC 27. So I've got some background in this kind of work. What I liked about the last two presentations and the last session was that I lost count of the times the word sharing and spectrum sharing was used. Okay, I've got to figure out that. No? There we go. So my career began with the New Zealand regulator, and I was tasked with working on both mobile and satellite issues. And that was in the 97, early 2000s. Then I moved to Qualcomm, where I worked on mostly terrestrial mobile technology, 3G, 4G, 5G. And in the 2020s, I'm now working for OmniSpace, which is satellite-based. And OmniSpace is developing a hybrid network, a satellite hybridized with terrestrial. OmniSpace provides the satellite component. We don't want to provide a terrestrial component. You guys in the mobile world, you do that far too well for us to compete. So we have a number of prerequisites that we need to have for the network of networks. And I can't read my slide anymore. So I'm going to walk a bit closer. Take the microphone. Yesterday, we heard a lot about 3GPP standards, and we have an expert on 3GPP standards here on the panel. Global standardization is required to meet the economies of scale required to bring costs down and create the market sizes that are required for global communications. We need a network. Terrestrial networks, they're already out there. Satellite networks are being launched. We need spectrum. Enough has been said about that today. And we need leadership to drive and keep things moving forward. We've got a panel of leaders here. We've got a great number of leaders out there. I'm honored to consider many of them my friends. And we need partnerships. We need industry partnerships. We need government partnerships. We need industry-government partnerships. We need academia. We need all of those people working together to create an ecosystem, the final result of which is to put a device in the pockets of every consumer. And for that consumer to not have to care how that device connects. I'm going to do a quick, I have to come back here, a quick recap of some milestones. In the 1990s, the ITU vision for IMT 2000 has two components, terrestrial and satellite. It's not a new thing. It's 30 years in development. There were two 3GPPs. They both worked on similar technologies. One was wideband CDMA, another one was CDMA. So in the 2000s, we saw the advent of the terrestrial 3G and 4G networks. They used that in the revenue from that investment to drive 5G. And we saw the first LEO networks being designed. There was a company driven Teledesic. It was funded by Microsoft. Europe's answer to Teledesic was Skybridge. And there was a little company called ICO. And then I'm going over time now. In the 2010s, a company called SpaceX came along and they privatized launch facilities, and that drove the cost down for getting satellites into space. So then you started to see the advent of LEO networks because you could put a lot of satellites up there. Importantly, OmniSpace brought into use in 2013 its first NGSO network. We now have another network that we brought into use. In the 2020s, we see that the satellite broadband revenue from the KUKM bands is being reinvested into direct-to-device. It's exactly the same process that was used in the terrestrial world. Urban revenues drove suburban deployments, drove rural deployments. And so we get to where we are now. And the first LEO networks, commercial LEO networks for D2D have been launched. Yesterday, a lot was said about 3GPP. I'm going to skip this slide. You all know 6G is the integration of satellite and terrestrial. There are two approaches to direct-to-device. One uses dedicated mobile satellite spectrum. Very little needs to be done in the regulatory sense to bring that to fruition. The other uses mobile spectrum, otherwise known in the FCC as supplementary coverage from space. There's some considerable regulatory hurdles there, and there's lack of global harmonization. Now, this is my most important slide. People talk about spectrum sharing. They say it's difficult. Well, it's only difficult if you want to use it in the same place. Picture on the left, the Pacific Ocean. I'd like to see you deploy a terrestrial network to cover the Pacific Ocean. Antarctica, ditto. The Atlantic and Sahara and the Amazon. Satellite's the only choice. And then we'll go to the Arctic. Pretty much, there's no one deploying terrestrial networks up there. Satellite is required. Now, I mentioned ecosystem, so this is my sales pitch. There is an association, the Mobile Satellite Services Association. Omnispace is a member, so is Qualcomm, so is Ericsson, so is MTN, very large African operator. All these companies together are working to develop the ecosystem. And that brings me full circle back to my first slide to say, we have all the prerequisites in place. All we need now is time to deploy. There we go. And sorry for going over.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. We have the last speaker, but not the least, is Adrian Scrice, who's a visiting professor at University of Surrey in UK.
Yes, thank you, Raymond, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to present slides, but as yesterday, I'm going to try and make comments taking into account what we've already heard and build upon those messages. And when I looked at the title of the session, I thought, well, if the question had been, should 6G be a network of networks, it would be rather easy to answer, because for me, it's a compelling yes. But if the question is, will 6G be a network of networks, I think my answer would be slightly different, because I'm not sure it's going to happen, and I shall give you some reasons why. First of all, why should we have a network of networks? What are the compelling reasons? And for me, there are a number, but I'll focus on just two. Coverage, we've mentioned many, many times yesterday and today, but I was delighted this morning. One of the very first slides we saw from the Working Party 5D chair shows the history of mobile. And there was quite a significant date, which was 1984, when this thing all started. So to put this in some perspective, we've been delivering mobile services for more than 40 years. And yet, if I look at part of the world I know best, the European footprint, in many of those countries, the coverage is actually pretty poor. And I know you can read statistics about the percentage of the population covered and that, but if you look at it from just a humble mobile broadband user that travels around the European footprint, there are many times when I either don't have service or the service I get is not good enough to do what I want to do. And I'm talking here in an outdoor environment. That alone, if I'm traveling on a train and trying to hold a conversation, that's a pretty tough task in most European countries. And you think, well, why after 40 years haven't we actually solved this very basic requirement of ubiquitous coverage for the people that want to use our networks? And I think network of networks is an obvious solution that could help in a more economic way to actually deliver the fundamental thing that we're trying to do, which is give service to people that want to use it. And I'm really hope that we seize the opportunity of network of networks to try and do that. But there is another compelling reason which comes to light with recent events, and that's that of resilience, where dependence on only terrestrial networks show that there are occasions where they can be either taken off air by system failure, by rogue actors, by natural disasters, but mobile technology is now part of our critical infrastructure, and it supports other parts of our critical infrastructure. So having all your eggs in one basket is fine until that basket breaks. And then all of a sudden, you are without coverage, completely without coverage. So I think the resilience is the second most compelling reason why trying to make 6G, or trying to use network of networks as an economic way to provide ubiquitous and resilient coverage sort of starts to make sense. Why do I have reservations then? Well, if I look at the terrestrial plus non-terrestrial component, I don't have reservations because, as Alex rightly says, we've been talking about this for a long time, but it's no longer just talk. If you look at what's happening in standards bodies, okay, in 5G, we got there just about, and it was a bit clunky. But if you look at what came out of the 6G workshop held a couple of weeks ago, there really was a compelling industry willingness to make this happen. There were many contributions that were supported. Agenda time has been allocated. So I'm quite convinced that for the non-terrestrial component, this will become an integrated part of 6G, and I'm rather sure that will happen. I know, Alex, you had some reservations about the ITU timeline, and maybe it may not occur at exactly the same time as the terrestrial component, but I'm rather sure that we will see the coming together of terrestrial and non-terrestrial for 6G. But if we talk about Wi-Fi and integration of Wi-Fi, I don't think that is likely to happen in any great way, shape, or form. Why do I say that? Because for that to happen, you have to have an industrial willingness. I don't see the momentum in industry as we see for the terrestrial plus non-terrestrial. I don't see that same momentum that says we as an industry want to make this happen, which is why I think it's unlikely to happen. That said, 3GPP has done an awful lot of work. It's done Wi-Fi calling, Wi-Fi offload. So good steps have been made in the right direction, but will we see an integrated Wi-Fi within our 6G network of networks? I just don't see that there is the willingness to do that just yet. We can look at the reasons why. Some of them are very obvious. The business models are entirely different. The community is different. It's a different set of actors, and they don't really talk the same language yet. And it's actually very similar to where we were with the non-terrestrial component, say 10, 15 years ago, where there wasn't that willingness to come together. We've got over it with the satellite community. We need to get over that somehow with the Wi-Fi community, but I don't see industry momentum that would give me the confidence that that will happen in the next 4 years. So in summary then, I would like to think 6G is going to be a network of networks. I'm convinced that it will in the context of integrating satellite connectivity, but I do have reservations in terms of connecting with the Wi-Fi community.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian. Okay, next we're going to have a discussion among the panel speakers, and then we'll open the discussion to the floor. To start with, maybe I'll ask a question to Ira. So in Brazil, in the context of networks, what do you think that has not been achieved for 5G may have a chance to be achieved in 6G? Mike, please.
It's a very interesting question. Thank you, Raymond. Well, in Brazil, for us, this integration is crucial. Yeah, that's 5G that give us this kind of range of technologies. For instance, as Adrian mentioned about the ENTN and Wi-Fi, we try to implement the AFC in Brazil, but it's didn't go forward. And in terms of non-terrestrial networks, we are really interested in deployment as this kind of system. We are very engaged in this testing in Brazil, and got good results there. Okay, and for us, the part of the 5G that don't deliver what you were expecting is about this this kind of integration that will be address the connective gaps that I told about the coverage areas in Brazil. Okay, then provide a comprehensive coverage by 6G.
So the government is making an effort on this in terms of policy making, or
in terms of
policy making, policy.
Yeah, we have a sandbox to motivate people, then operators to do the tests, and we are doing some modification in our regulation about marketing to improve some asymmetries and reduce the barriers to entrance, the other operators. That's to explore this any kind of the technology.
Okay, thank you. I got a question for Adrian. You mentioned Wi-Fi offload. We've heard about this for a long time. I'm not in industry, but still I've heard about this for a long time. Is it really happening?
Yes, I think so. At least the tools are there to make it happen. So the standards are in place and they can be implemented if industry wants to use them, and that is the role of a standards body. But it needs to be a compelling reason why you would want to do that. But yes, it is happening, certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any questions that you like to bring up for discussion? Or?
No, I was just to reflect on what Adrian was saying as well. I mean, and I agree a lot with Adrian. I mean, that's certainly on I think the satellite and terrestrial component of network and networks, that seems to be developing very well. On the Wi-Fi side, I think it is quite an interesting debate. I mean, one thing that is always said at sort of conferences in Europe is that mobile networks are entirely reliant on offloading their traffic onto Wi-Fi. I mean, it's usually a figure around 85% of data traffic in Europe is carried over Wi-Fi networks, and I think that's slightly different to some of the models that you have in Asia and certainly in Hong Kong. But so I think you've got quite good sort of integration, if you like, sort of at that level between the mobile and the Wi-Fi networks. But I completely agree that we're still a long way from the seamless sort of connectivity that users may would ideally like. And even between Wi-Fi networks, it's difficult. I mean, you don't have seamless connectivity between different Wi-Fi networks. You tend to have to move from one location to another, then log on to the different Wi-Fi. And that's something that I know the Wi-Fi industry is trying to address. I think trying to take that then to the mobile networks is a step further. That said, and just to end, I mean, I think we've had a really long debate on the upper 6 gigahertz band in Europe over the last 2 years. And I do think that is beginning to sort of find a way forward. I mean, obviously, Ofcom's consulting at the moment. There's work that's going on through Europe, as we were hearing about as well. And I do think that's beginning to find a way forward. And actually, one thing that has done is that while the mobile and the Wi-Fi industries may still speak different languages to a certain extent, it has got them into the same room. And I think it has made some progress. And we may see some benefits of that. At least I hope we will.
Okay, thank you.
Just add on to that, because I really don't think there is any value in trying to apportion blame, and I didn't want to intend that in my intervention, because that's not what we're trying to do. But we should really try to look at things more from the consumer point of view than from the industry looking at ourselves, because what do our consumers really want to happen? What do they need? What do they want to see happen? And then how can we provide that? And my contention is that network of networks could be a way to do that.
Yeah, Alex.
Just to add to that, I don't think that we need to have one standard that incorporates all forms of terrestrial technologies and all forms of satellite technologies. In some ways, it is beneficial to have, say, the Wi-Fi, IEEE-based technologies develop in their own, at their own pace, and have 6G terrestrial networks and non-terrestrial networks develop at their pace, but be aligned. There needs to be some way of interconnection, though. And at the moment, what we see is that satellite connectivity and backhaul with Wi-Fi head ends at the terrestrial end is a very, very viable use case. And the KU-Ka band broadband satellite networks are pursuing that. Now, at the other end, you have the 6 gigahertz problem. And so it ends up being an issue of horses for courses. So if you're sitting in the middle of Sahara and you have an oasis and you want to, access the internet in your whatever tent, you can do that via Wi-Fi, and you have satellite backhaul. It connects to a 5G network, core network somewhere, gets routed down to a 4G or 5G phone somewhere, and that connectivity is made to happen. It works. The consumer doesn't need to know how it works, just that it does work. And we have that right now. So we are seeing the network of networks emerge. Now, that's an organic process. And a lot of what we do is planned processes. But we have to be aware that you have to let things, you have to plan. There is no alternative to planning, especially when it comes to spectrum availability. But in other respects, there is value in letting things develop organically. And I think if there's one thing that I want everyone to take away is, and I echo Ross Batesman's comments, what the future holds, we don't know. But if you let it develop organically, it will come up with solutions. Thank you.
Alex, actually, I have a question for you since you mentioned quite a bit about satellite. Do you think there will be a time when we can use broadband on passenger flights for free?
I use broadband on passenger flights for free today.
Which airline?
Well, I've traveled so much that I have elite status with Cathay Pacific. Thank you, Cathay Pacific. I won't tell you who Cathay Pacific uses as their connectivity provider. It is a satellite provider. I won't tell you who United Airlines uses as a connectivity provider, but it is also a satellite provider. One is a GEO and one is a LEO.
It's great, great. Oh, okay. I think it's time for us to open the discussion to the floor. Anyone from the floor, please?
Amit Nagpal from Ether Consulting. I listened with great interest to your remarks, Adrian, and I was just sitting there nodding all the way through because I totally agree with your analysis of the situation. And I just wondered if I could take it one stage further, but in relation to the Wi-Fi mobile connectivity. I mean, this is something that has been with us for 15 years now and has not worked. There's all been the technology's past point and so on, but it hasn't worked. Now, if after 15 years it hasn't worked, it suggests, and it's something that consumers want. I believe the interoperability and being able to go across to Wi-Fi. If this is not a market failure, I'd love to know what is. And given, if you agree it's a market failure, then surely this is the role of government regulator to try and do something to fix the problem. So I guess my plea is, would one brave government or regulator in the world take the initiative on this? Perhaps a country where this is particularly a problem, because I suspect 200 countries will then follow.
I'm not sure if that was for Chris or for me. But I'll comment first. I mean, I would like to think this can be resolved without regulatory intervention, because to me, it shouldn't need a heavy hand to make it happen. On the other hand, if there is no industrial willingness to do something, history shows that it won't happen. And somehow it needs to be a coming together of minds. It really isn't a technology issue. There are technology questions that need to be solved, of course. The authentication of Wi-Fi is totally different, but it's much more about the business models and revenue streams. And I would like to think that eventually we do get a coming together of minds that will resolve this without regulatory intervention, but maybe it needs a bit more of a nudge to make it happen, and that's where I'll pass over to Chris.
Well, I'll go first if you like. I mean, I'm a bit nervous, I must admit, about announcing a regulatory intervention. I mean, and I'm not sure that would go down. I entirely agree with the sentiment. But if we also look at it the other way and take a step back, I mean, if you look at the sort of the levels of connectivity that people get now, is it perfect? I completely agree. We're a long way from being perfect. And if you look at the quality of mobile networks in Europe, again, I agree with Adrian. There's definitely room for improvement. But actually, most consumers are pretty happy with the service they get from Wi-Fi in particular, and actually that is delivering data speeds, and Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7 is delivering a service for consumers in their home, in their office, which is actually doing a pretty good job, and that's why I'm a bit nervous about sort of stepping in and sort of suggesting that it needs regulation, because my fear is that actually you sort of almost make things worse. I think things are improving. It's slightly disappointing to say that passport things like that haven't worked. I think the Wi-Fi industry is looking to see how that sort of interconnectivity between them can be improved. Maybe there's some space there, but it's very difficult to think of what the regulatory measure would be to try and improve that, and leaving it up to industry to do that, serving consumer needs, I think would be my preference by quite a long way.
I wonder if it is the sort of nudge that Adrian referred to. So, almost putting the different players in a room together and try and encourage them to come up with a business solution, because it is a business solution. I agree with you. It's not technology. It's the business models and the revenue flows.
I'm going to jump in here. Amit, you mentioned market failure. Another way of looking at that is market opportunity. And this letting industry figure it out and pushing people into a room and giving it a nudge. All of that is exactly what I meant by saying let things develop organically. You don't actually have to put everyone in a room. You just need to get one or two people in a room. And they will start that solution rolling. And then once it catches on, it will promulgate through the world, and I hope to come back in a couple of years and we can have this same discussion again, and we can see what a market success it has been. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good morning, Philip. Sorry, Philip Marnick from CRA Bahrain. I am a regulator. I think this debate shows where, as an industry, technologies are looking at solutions for problems that may not exist for real people. Chris said mobile operators offload 70 to 80% of their traffic. I think that is absolutely wrong. And the reason for that is when you go into your house or you go into your office and use Wi-Fi, you're not offloading your mobile. You are using your home broadband system to do the things that you're doing at home, which may or may not use a device that is a mobile device outside. So you're making a conscious choice of what you're trying to do. And your device, Magic and Devices, seamlessly moves from the outside world to the inside world because you've set the priority in the device to use Wi-Fi while you're indoors. So that you have to ask yourself the question of what is it doing, which then brings us to the point of actually, do we need more spectrum for the indoor world? As here in Hong Kong, I think you have 10 gigabits per second internet. Singapore has 10 gigabits per second internet. We are moving to that sort of thing. How do we have sufficient that the consumer gets it? So I think when we talk about networks of networks, we need to ask ourselves the question, what is the problem we're trying to fix? And is it a technical solution to a real problem, or just a technical solution because standards people want a technical solution? Thank you.
I'd like to add some points in this speech. As I mentioned in my presentation, we are finalizing the Wi-Fi 7 test and with 6 gigahertz quiz test. And the question that came up of us is about the billing. It's another layer in this context that who pays the bill, because in Brazil we have fixed operators and the mobile operators, and this integration, it's not something that easy to deal between them. Okay, that's the other point that I'd like to add the discussion to. Okay.
And can I just add, I mean, in response to, I know better than to get into an argument with Philip, but I did want to just come back on the points that he raises. I mean, firstly, on the whether it's 80% that's offloaded, I mean, I agree. I mean, it depends on how you calculate it. The point, however, is that in Europe, I mean, the mobile networks are not set up to carry that amount of traffic. In other words, it needs to be carried on the Wi-Fi networks because the mobile networks just haven't got the capacity to be able to carry that volume of traffic. So yeah, you are absolutely relying on the Wi-Fi networks when you're at home or in the office. I would entirely agree though on the point about indoor traffic. I mean, I think that distinction between indoor and outdoor and where traffic is generated from is absolutely key. You know, most traffic is generated indoors, and finding the right way to serve that demand and meet the consumer needs for that indoor traffic and meeting that in the most efficient way, and that includes spectrum efficiency, energy efficiency, etc., is absolutely key. So I think that indoor, outdoor, absolutely.
Maybe we'll take one more question from the floor before we move on to some questions online.
Scott Moynihan, I just wanted to just make a quick comment on the last bit. Isn't that indoor solution, we're starting to see that with fiber to the room, right? So in reality, you're not then sharing all that spectrum in your house or your apartment. You're actually going to have that much more sequented by having that fiber you're making that choice that Philip mentioned, but you're actually putting the fiber even closer to those access nodes. So that's going to then mean that we still can balance up that spectrum usage quite well, particularly into the 6G world.
Any comment on this?
Yes, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, clearly for the future, for new build homes and what have you, put in more fiber, that makes sense, but there's a long way to go before that's going to be available in all homes. I think certainly across, as I say, across the UK, but it's an aspiration.
Right, okay, let me try to address some questions online. Let me read out the first question. Is there any thought in priority and preemptive functional settings in this network of networks topic, in particular to public safety users?
So public safety, there are basically two requirements. Reliability plus resilience and coverage. So you need to have public safety networks when you need them, where you need them. We see many disaster events around the world, large-scale disaster events. The Tongan earthquake, the Tongan volcano eruption, the Asian tsunami, where terrestrial networks are unable to operate for various reasons, quite often because they have no power or they are destroyed by weather events or large-scale natural disasters. Satellite communications are largely resilient to those kinds of events. So satellite has that role, as well as providing everyday connectivity to places where terrestrial networks aren't. But satellite communications are not immune to space weather events. So we have solar flares, etc. We try and make our satellites as resilient as possible. And the good thing is that solar weather events are very short-lived. And there's not a correlation between solar weather events and terrestrial weather events, apart from some great aurora, northern and southern lights. So yes, the answer to that question is yes.
Yes.
Satellite provides the resilience and the coverage.
Very good, thank you. The next question is interesting, but I don't think you would be the good person to answer this question. The question is, who should take the lead in defining and enforcing interoperability standards? Should it be industry, alliances, global regulators, 3GPP, or a mix of these? Well, Alex thinks it should be grown organically, right? So you don't believe it.
Well, I was gonna pass this one on to our 3GPP expert, but I say all.
Yeah, exactly. I think history shows that unless you have a coming together of minds from the entire ecosystem, it doesn't tend to happen. So I think you need to get everybody. Maybe we follow the Vatican procedure where you lock the door and no one's let out until they agree on how this is going to happen. But honestly, trying to force it to happen is unlikely to be successful. It needs to be a natural process where industry agrees this is the right thing to do and they're going to make it happen. But I'm really not a fan of using the regulatory arm to try and insist that this happen, because again, historically, things that are imposed tend not to work very well. It's much better to leave it to a willing industry to make it happen, but really encourage them to do so.
Yeah, so we are in line with Alex. So things should grow organically, but at the same time, you know, regulatory may have a role in it. Yeah.
The regulators have a guiding hand.
Yeah. Very good.
Or a conclave of radio engineers.
Well, let me see how much time. I think we are running out of time, and I think it's time to wrap up this session. It's a great session. I personally have learned quite a lot of things, and so it looks like that's this topic of network of networks is an ongoing story, and maybe we should have another discussion on this at the 7G summit. Okay, let's thank all the speakers, and thank you for attending the session.
Thank you very much indeed, panel. Another conversation that could run and run, I think. We're going to break for lunch, and we have an hour for lunch, so if we could be back here at 1:40. Thank you very much.